right, so we are on part 3, the maze, and they've just gone into the tunnels. And um, Gregor said, "I'm going to kill the Bane," and they don't know where Luxa and Boots have gone. Um, all we know is that there's lots of water between them. So, chapter 19. You cannot do it alone," Howard said with a shake of his head. "Yes, I can," said Gregor. "Tell them why, Twitch Tip." Twitch Tip raised one rat eyebrow at Gregor to see if he was sure. He nodded. "All right, then," she said. "He may stand a chance. He's a rager." The word had an effect on everybody. Ares and Andromeda both ruffled their wings. Howard's mouth dropped open. "A rager," he said. How how know you this?" "Ragers put out a very specific scent when they fight," said Twitch Tip. "It is a slight even for me, but I can detect it. I smelled it the first time I met the Overlander, but later wondered if I confused it with Ripred's scent. He'd been fighting as well." "I was thinking the blood balls that day," said Gregor. "Or I was hitting the blood balls that day," said Gregor. "That was the first time I felt like that." "Yes, and then when the squid attacked, I was certain about it," said Twitch Tip. "I told him he was a rager a few days later, but he denied it." There was a pause, and Gregor could feel the others watching him. "Because I didn't want it to be true, but that doesn't matter what I want. I don't know what it is. Something happens when I fight, something weird, and if Twitch Tip thinks she smells the rager thing on me, she's probably right." "Well, say it's true, Gregor, and you are a rager. It doesn't make you immortal. It does not mean you can walk into a maze full of rats alone," said Howard. "He will not be alone," said Ares. "I will be with him." "And I'll lead him into the maze as far as I am able," said Twitch Tip. "I got a good whiff of white fur before I lost my nose. If I can't lead him to the Bane, I can get him close." "Then Andromeda and I will come too," said Howard. "You're not invited," said Gregor. "What?" said Howard. "I don't want you in the maze, Howard. I want you to take Meredith back and tell people what happened. Someone has to, and if I don't come back, I need you to somehow get word to my family," said Gregor. "You are not in charge of this mission," said Howard. "I had orders from Regalia." "Okay, but if you try to follow me, I'll fight you," said Gregor. "You will not stand a chance on foot, fighting a rager on a flyer," said Ares. "Especially with a rat on their side," said Twitch Tip. Howard was starting to lose it now. "Maybe I will take the chance. Maybe Andromeda will too." "Please don't, Howard. Please go back. I don't want my mom and dad waiting for Boots and me to walk in the door when it's not going to happen. And sooner or later, if we don't show up, I know they'll come looking for us," said Gregor. "And they need to know in Regalia too, about Luxa. They have to find a new queen or king now, right now. Because no matter what Luxa said, Nerissa probably can't handle it. So it will be Vicus, then your mom, and then you. But if you die, it will be Stelvit." "Oh, I didn't think of that," said Howard. "You're going to leave her in charge of Regalia?" asked Gregor. "No, I'm not. Howard ground the palms of his hands into his forehead. Between losing Pandora and Luxa, whom he'd only just found, really, and the responsibility of a kingdom hanging over him, he was clearly overwhelmed. "I do not know what to do. Andromeda, what say you?" "I will not fight the Overlander and risk injuring him. I am taking Meredith home," said Andromeda, "and you should come with me." "Oh," the resistance seemed to go out of Howard. "I cannot fight all of you," he said. He sat there for a few moments, his head bowed. Then he shook it off and tried to get back to business. "Well then, every second counts if we hope to get Meredith back alive. But Andromeda cannot make the flight without rest, and there's nowhere safe to land." That was true. They had all pondered it. Then Ares spoke up. "There are some pieces of the boat in the tankard. Not large, but they still float. Maybe you could make them into a lifeboat," said Gregor. "What's a lifeboat?" asked Howard. "In the Overland, big boats like ships and things have lifeboats attached to them. They are small boats you can get in if your ship sinks or something," said Gregor. "If the boat were light enough to carry, and I could rest for a few hours at a time, I could make it," said Andromeda. Ares volunteered to search for wreckage. I'll go with you, said Gregor. He needed to talk to his bat. He waited until they were flying out over the tankard to speak. You don't have to do this, Ares. Come after the Bane. I can go alone. No, we will go together, said Ares. Besides, the Gnars have killed every reason I had to return to Regalia. If by some strange chance they live and you return home, the silence begins for me. What the bat said was true. With Luxa and Aurora gone, Ares would have no contact with anyone. He could probably sit in his hideout for years without anyone bothering to check in on him. Gregor would go home, his heart dead, and Ares would be as good as banished. Okay, said Gregor, we'll go together. He had a feeling they would never have a decision like this again, about whether one would go into danger without the other. He didn't bother to thank Ares. Somehow they were past thanking each other. Somehow it would almost be like thanking himself. Gregor realized that the journey filled with squids and whirlpools and mites and serpents and loss, great loss, had changed them. It had made the oath they had sworn in front of that furious crowd in Regalia real. He remembered the feel of Ares' claw clasped in his hand and thought of the words he'd said with Luxa, prompting him. Ares, the flyer, I bond to you. Our life and death are one we two. In dark, in flame, in war and strife, I save you as I save my life. Ares was his bat. Gregor was Ares' human. They were truly bonded now. If there was one positive note, they made a good haul. Ares found 3 pieces of the boat, and Howard was able to fashion them into sort of a raft using the last few strips of duct tape. It wasn't anything you'd want to try crossing the waterway on, but when they went down and tested it, it held up under the combined weight of Gregor, Ares, and Howard. It should do for a few hours at a time, said Howard, long enough for Andromeda to sleep a bit. Almost as important as the boat wreckage were the 2 packs they retrieved. They had washed up inside one of the tunnels when the waves were high. The first contained food. The second, to Howard's great relief, was his first aid kit. Oh, this is good as light itself, he said. He immediately opened the pack and began to work on everyone. He changed Meredith's and Twitch-Tip's bandages, dousing the wounds with medicine. He rewrapped Gregor's arm, which was actually showing more improvement, and doubled Ares' mite bites with salve. Howard insisted Gregor take the rest of the food since Meredith couldn't eat anyway, and he and Andromeda could live on raw fish. And who knows what you will find in the labyrinth. Gregor took Meredith's sword. Howard still had his own. Finally, they divided up light. They had 2 working flashlights. Howard's had died during the serpent attack, and the 2 had disappeared into the deep with Luxa and Boots. So there was 1 flashlight per party, but Howard made Gregor take every spare battery. Even with no light, Andromeda will get us home. You have many more difficulties with which to contend. Gregor nodded. He put his candy bars, the food, and the spare batteries in 1 backpack. He wedged Meredith's sword between 2 straps. The flashlight was still taped onto his good arm. Andromeda flattened out her back, and they laid Meredith on it. Howard tucked the spare blanket from his first aid kit around him. Then he swung his leg over the bat's neck. Fly you high, Gregor the Overlander. Fly you high, said Gregor, although been nice knowing you seemed more appropriate. He didn't really expect to see Howard again. Andromeda took off, snagging the raft in her claws as she left the tunnel. Almost immediately, they were lost from view. Gregor, Ares, and Twitch-Tip turned and headed into the tunnel without a word.